Canada Post strike did not actually happen, at least not yet, but there is a caveat to that, which we will be taking a look at. You also have an update on the Harvard lawsuit with President Donald Trump. You've got Mark Carney losing control of his cabinet, and some of his MPs are already in the hot seat with reporters. Just overall an absolute kind of shit show happening here in Canada, and we're going to cover everything in this video. So welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does tremendously help grow the channel. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I do have a message from today's sponsor. When I prepare my videos, I make sure that I know both sides of the story. That's why I use Ground News, and that's why I've partnered with them. Ground News is a website and app that pulls sources from thousands of different websites across the internet, organizes them by story, and shows you a visual breakdown of the political bias, ownership, and reliability. Take this story that's barely getting any attention to South Korea's bold arms deal to supply Canada with fighter jets and submarines instead of the United States. You'd think something like this would be on the front page, but apparently it's not. Ground News shows us that over 30 sources have covered the actual story. 67% of it is actually coming from the right. Left-leaning media outlets like CBC and Global News do cover the story, but they keep it surface level. Meanwhile, right-leaning outlets like 1945 dig deeper to point out the serious concerns about Canada's vulnerabilities. I actually found the story my favorite spot of Ground News, the blind spot feed, which is where I go to find out which side is or isn't covering the story. Subscribe to my link down in the description or use the QR code on screen to get 40% off the Vantage plan today. That's the exact same plan that I use. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. Without further ado, let's get into the video, starting off with Canada Post. What is actually going on with Canada Post? Because they had set a deadline for the strike. If they don't reach their demands, they're going on strike as of yesterday. But it's obviously not yesterday, it's today. So why aren't they on strike? Well, the caveat is instead of going on strike just yet, they're basically preventing anybody from doing overtime work, which only kind of hurts themselves. Like, it's not like it's a massive mail rushing season like the holidays, like Christmas, for example. But nonetheless, let's get into this video.
Well, they didn't strike at midnight, and Canada Post employees weren't walking the picket lines today.
But they are refusing overtime, and the threat of a full work stoppage still looms. CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live with the latest on the labor dispute. Beth.
Yes, Canada Post is operating for now. This action means members are being told not to work more than 8 hours a day. It's still not clear if a strike can be averted, but some small businesses aren't taking any chances when it comes to using the service.
So I'm just about to ship this.
At this Queen Street East dress shop, packages are being prepared, but they won't be sent via Canada Post.
We want the best for Canada Post, but we also want the best for Doll Factory by Damsels.
Cup W, the union representing 55,000 workers, is in a legal strike position as of today, but hasn't walked off the job. Instead, it's told members not to work overtime as it reviews the Crown Corporation's latest offer. During last year's strike, in the middle of the busy holiday shopping season, Doll Factory by Damsels had thousands of dollars of merchandise stuck in transit as the month-long work stoppage dragged on.
At the end of the day, we were more mad at ourselves for in trusting in a situation that we thought would be like it normally is, and unfortunately, it wasn't.
Canada Post says volumes are down significantly and is warning of possible delays. Last night, the two sides met but failed to reach a deal.
Canada Post did give us this offer on Wednesdays. This was the first time after negotiating for over 2 years. So I'm very optimistic, but there is work to be done.
We believe they are, the foundation of a deal. We've got rooms booked for the weekend. We're ready to meet at a moment's notice and talk through those offers.
Wages in the era of rising inflation, along with part-time weekend work, have been two sticking points. With Canada Post in decline and e-commerce exploding, this business professor says it's time for the parcel side to be competitive.
Cup W, I know this is going to sound really hard, and that means, yes, part-time jobs. It means route restructuring. And there's going to be reductions of staff.
Given the current labor dispute, this store says it can't depend on Canada Post to get parcels where they need to go.
It's frustrating to us because we prefer to use Canada Post. It is a great service. It's pretty fast. It's pretty reasonably priced.
It's using an alternative service, hoping Canada Post becomes reliable once again. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says the strike last year led to $1.6 billion in losses for small businesses. Canada Post has had losses of more than $3 billion since 2018.
Again, kind of weird. I don't really know how Canada Post is going to survive after this strike. It feels like they've just lost all credibility, but that's my opinion. I'd love to know yours. Now we're going to talk about Alberta separation, the separatist movement. Turns out that it might not be going as planned, or it may. There's actually conflicting information that's being pushed out there. But to start off is the fact that Mark Carney can apparently squash this separatist movement just like that. So let's take a look.
Alberta's premier says Prime Minister Mark Carney has the power to squash a separatist movement. She made the remarks this afternoon as she wrapped up a meeting with her Western counterparts in Yellowknife. CTV's Evan Kenny joins us live in studio this evening with the latest. So, Evan, what did the premier have to say this afternoon?
Matt Smith, along with the premiers from BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all three territories, have been in meetings for the past 2 days. All 7 premiers agreed Canada needs to find a new way of moving natural resources. Now, during an afternoon press conference, it was Smith who emphasized Prime Minister Mark Carney is the one with the ability to make this happen and keep Canada united. The premiers say they're focused on projects that create national unity, help build up the country, and transport Canada's natural resources to Europe and Asia. National unity has been on many people's minds, especially with Danielle Smith putting forward a bill to make it easier to call a referendum on separation. She says if the Prime Minister acts on the ideas that are coming out of this meeting, it would take the wind out of the sails of a separatist movement.
Talking about how we can help each other, how we can trade with each other, how we can work together to create new economic corridors so we can all get our various products to markets. And if we can find some support from the federal government on that, I think that's all that the people of Alberta have been looking for.
Last week, when CTV asked Mark Carney about his thoughts on building pipelines, he simply said yes and added building a pipeline is just one element of making Canada an energy superpower. All of Canada's premiers are scheduled to meet with the Prime Minister in just under 2 weeks on June 2nd.
So even though Mark Carney has the ability to put an end to the referendum process, it seems you also have other people that are anti-separatist groups. That gets weird. Anti-separatist groups are encouraging the referendum from happening so that we can have a peaceful resolution to the referendum because they believe that the referendum won't get the support that it needs. So anti-separatist people are going, yeah, let's put it on the ballot and let's see once and for all what the result is. That's kind of weird and also kind of risky because I feel like there's an overwhelming amount of support for this, but let's take a look at that clip.
Former Deputy Premier says he believes an Alberta separation referendum is inevitable, and he's taking steps to ensure the process does not favor separatists. Thomas Lukazik says if a separation question is going to be asked, it should be framed by Canadians instead of those advocating to leave the country. He says the question should be, do you want to continue to stay in Canada, instead of one proposed by separatist groups. His group, Forever Canada, is collecting enough signatures to push a ballot box question.
My approach is, you want to talk about separation? Bring it on. Let's have a referendum, but it will be framed on facts, not anger, and it will be a positive question.
Because his application was filed before competing applicants, Lukazik says his must be considered first. Lukazik believes most Albertans do not want to leave Canada. He says if his question is accepted, Alberta law would prevent future referendums on the same subject for 5 years.
So it doesn't just stop there. You have the majority of Canadians. I think it was like 55% of Canadians seem to understand why Alberta wants to separate. That kind of makes sense. I think the number is a little bit higher, but we'll just chalk it up as 55% of Canadians understand why. Now, here's the mixed bag of things. Out of those 55%, will that be enough Canadians, or specifically Albertans, for this to happen? Well, there's a big Western separatist movement, right? Started with Alberta. It's also Saskatchewan, which, even though it's not the West, it's the Western side of Canada. And then you also have British Columbia. Now, if all three of these provinces were to move forward with the referendum process or try to get this separatism movement going, that would be huge. But right out the gate, David Eby, the Premier of BC, isn't even entertaining it at all. And chances are he wouldn't even allow it to be on a ballot in the province, which is kind of weird. But let's take a look at that clip.
For years, Peter Downing has believed Alberta should exit Canada. New polling suggests that sentiment is resonating with people outside of Alberta. But Downing's not so sure.
For the people who were in that poll, to us, it just seems like they're the mean girls. They're the ones who just want to have us keep begging for their acceptance.
He's referring to a new Leger poll, which suggests more than half of Canadians understand why Alberta might want independence. Leger's Andrew Enns says it suggests there may be some empathy for separatist plight.
When the provincial government seems to be butting heads more on a fairly regular basis with the national government, I think Canadians pick up on that.
Still, most Canadians don't support Alberta separating from Canada. Nearly 2/3 of Canadians oppose Alberta becoming an independent country. A quarter say they support the idea. Opposition is highest in Ontario and British Columbia.
But I think BC would suddenly feel themselves a little bit isolated, potentially, if suddenly there was a new country in between them and the rest of Canada.
British Columbia's Premier, David Eby, has made a clear push for unity. He made the comments during a meeting between Western premiers in Yellowknife.
There is no worse time for us to get dragged into conversations about splitting up the country or this kind of thing than right now, when in front of us is all this amazing opportunity.
The premiers outlined a shared vision to strengthen supply chains and open new markets. Premier Danielle Smith underscoring her desire for more pipelines and talks with Prime Minister Mark Carney.
If we can find some support from the federal government on that, I think that's all that the people of Alberta have been looking for.
Downing believes there's nothing that will slow down an anger that's been on a slow burn.
I think we've been down this path enough, and we've made the decision it's time to leave.
Morgan Black, Global News.
I think that if these politicians are so confident that there won't be the support for the referendum to happen in any sort of province, then why not just let it go on the ballot anyways, right? Let the people decide, because ultimately that's what democracy is all about. It doesn't matter if you're a right-wing politician or a left-wing politician or in the middle or whatever it is. Democracy is the people get to vote. And if the people want to have the referendum on the ballot, then the people should be able to have the referendum on the ballot. That's my opinion, folks. I would absolutely love to know yours. And also, let me know down in the comments if you think that a Western separatist movement, such as Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, would be good. What do you guys kind of think of that idea? But moving away from separatism, we're now going to take a look at the update for the Harvard lawsuit against President Donald Trump. Because it is interesting. Banning foreigners from going to school at one of the most prestigious, arguably the most prestigious school in America is a bold move. And I said this yesterday. I think that Canada should follow suit at some of our high-end schools like University of Toronto, University of Victoria. We should probably start to think of something like that. Let's take a look at the clip.
An escalating showdown between Harvard University and the Trump administration. The prestigious school striking back over the president's attempt to ban international students. CTV's Heather Wright on the Canadians finding themselves caught in the chaos.
Nearly 7,000 international students attend Harvard University and now find themselves caught in the middle of a fight between their school and the American president.
It's extremely nerve-wracking. There's just so much panic, frustration.
Canadian economics student Thomas Maid is among those worried about the Trump administration's decision yesterday to ban international students from attending Harvard.
I think just students in my position now have no other choice but to remain hopeful. So much of our lives are tied up at Harvard, so much of our ongoing work, and our tuition as well. But there's just so much at stake for all of us.
Today, a judge temporarily blocked the federal order after Harvard filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. The suit called Trump's edict a clear retaliation for Harvard exercising its First Amendment rights to control Harvard's governance, curriculum, and the ideology of its faculty and students. The White House has been locked in a fierce battle with Harvard and other elite post-secondary schools, accusing them of not doing enough to combat anti-Semitism on campus. Criticism that stems in part from campus protests last year over the war in Gaza. While others have yielded to a number of Trump's demands, Harvard has not. Still today, the president said this order could extend to other schools.
Well, we're taking a look at a lot of things.
Harvard said it is enacting policies to beef up its fight against anti-Semitism, but insists these executive orders are really about control.
It's clearly blackmail. It's a financial blackmail.
Now, the reason I said what I said, which is to follow suit and to block foreigners to, prevent them from going to some of our most prestigious schools, is to encourage Canadians to go to those schools. Instead of filling some of those seats with foreign students, including Americans, it should be Canadians first. The reason, though, is not to just block out all foreigners. It's actually a bit of a more complicated reason behind it. It's to build a loyalty trust bridge with America so that when America does these things moving forward, like tariffs on the world or banning other countries from accessing certain goods or services in America, that Canada will be on the inside of that circle, not on the outside of that wall. I really think that it's in our best interest. Yes, remain an independent country. Sure, keep our flag, keep our money, but we should be a little bit more integrated with the American economy, with the American culture. That doesn't mean lose our independence, but it does mean that we should be playing ball with them. Now, call that an American apologist or whatever CTV wants to slander me with. I think that in terms of the future of where the world is going, it's going to be kind of two different ways. Western culture will dominate, or Sharia law will kind of dominate. It's kind of a coin toss as to which one. And I'll be honest, I'm on the side of Western culture. I want America to be America and North America to remain America. And if that just means that Canada has to play ball with America and give and take on some issues, then I think that's where we should be leaning towards. Again, let me know if you guys agree or disagree or any rebuttals to what I just said. And finally, we're going to finish this up with Mélanie Joly. I used to kind of refer to her as Justin Trudeau's mistress. I guess we can't do that anymore since who's Justin Trudeau these days? We don't even know. Somewhere at Canadian Tire or Taylor Swift concert, probably. But Mélanie Joly, she's shed that title for now. I'm sure I'll think of something soon. She had this to say in a recent press conference.
I want to update you on what we're doing on the economic front. So as I've told you last week, I left the diplomatic front of the trade war with the U.S. to the economic front. And in that sense, my job as the new Minister of Industry is to really work on the consequences of the U.S. tariffs and to make sure that we can continue to fight for Canadian workers, to make sure that we're in solution mode with businesses and their CEOs, and at the same time that we can continue to grow the economy. My three priorities are these ones. The first one is to make sure that we fight for the sectors that are the most affected by this trade war. So the auto sector, and I was just in Oshawa a bit earlier today at GM, meeting with management, but also meeting with the workers. I would like to thank all the people working on the lines that are making us so proud for their hard work, and we'll continue to fight for your jobs. Meanwhile, I also was in Quebec last week meeting with the hardworking aluminum workers, and I had many conversations also with CEOs of the sector, and same for the people working in the steel sector. And definitely my goal is to make sure that I can go and meet with people that are working either at Algoma or Rio Tinto or ArcelorMittal. So that's my goal. So this is the first priority because, of course, these are the people on the front lines of this trade war. The second priority is really continuing to grow the Canadian economy at a time of geopolitical uncertainty. And so this is a huge challenge, but this is something I think that we can really continue to do, particularly in a couple of sectors. Definitely the defense sector, which will help our manufacturing sector. Definitely also through working on empowering AI, and at the same time in the energy sector. And finally, the third priority that I have is really attracting the best talent in the world. We have an opportunity that we've never seen since the Vietnam War to attract the best and the brightest, particularly coming from south of the border, and we will make sure that we seize this opportunity.
Well, she kind of gets it. The best and the brightest around the world coming from south of the border, indicating America. And this is what I'm talking about. We should be focusing on more integration between Canada and America so that in the future, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Trudeau's previous mistress, but it is good for our economy and our country that when America decides to push forward with, tariffs against the rest of the world, or we're banning foreigners from accessing like Harvard, Canada is excluded of those things, right? That Canada, we're on the inside circle with a little baby brother to America. That's what I would like to see moving forward. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with that. And now we're going to conclude everything with a couple of questions from reporters asked towards Melanie Joly and then her answers.
The federal government has stopped its national EV rebates, with sales showing a softening of the EV market. Does the federal government have any plans to bring back its rebates to encourage people to buy? And is there any consideration to reduce tariffs against EVs made in China to make them a more affordable option for consumers?
So it's not a follow-up question, but it's another question, but I'll answer it. It is definitely our intent to make sure that Canadians can benefit from lower prices on electric vehicles. We said it in our platform that we would be bringing back the support programs for electric vehicles. So we will work on this issue. We know that it is important for our auto sector. It is also important to make sure that Canadians are able to have access to affordable electric vehicles.
The consequences of the tariffs. What are you doing specifically to get rid of the tariffs on automobiles and steel?
Well, a couple of things. Of course, we're in negotiations with the Americans right now. The Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, also in charge of U.S. trade, Dominique LeBlanc, is in Washington as we speak. He's been in contact with many officials. But that being said, also, we've worked as well with the auto sector in Canada to make sure that we could find a way to protect the jobs in that sector that is really, really affected through a remission system. So that's what we've done. Now things are going very fast, and negotiations are happening by the hour. So that's the only thing that I can say.
Canada's countermeasures on automobiles include provisions about investments, footprint, and employment levels by the D3 in Canada. How come we're still seeing production cuts, shifts being cut, layoffs at the D3?
So, a couple of things. I had last week a conversation with Honda regarding their investments in the electric vehicle sector. The CEO confirmed that no jobs would be cut and the conditions of workers would remain the same, and that there was still a commitment to the electric vehicle sector, but there is a softening of the demand. So that's just a reality, and it's linked also not only to the U.S. tariffs, but it is also linked to the fact that President Trump has decided not to go ahead with the Inflation Reduction Act. So the IRA that was put in place by President Biden that was providing for support for electric vehicles. So that's the first point. Second is I spoke this morning with the president of Stellantis. He also assured me that there would be no job loss and the conditions of workers would remain the same. But indeed, there is also a softening in the demand on the electric vehicle side.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this video. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Again, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.